tonight's board review session and then 7 o'clock board meeting. So welcome to all of those that are viewing in TV land. We have just a few seats remaining out here in the audience. So if you're coming to the board meeting, get down here right away and grab a seat as quickly as you can. And for all the auditors in the audience watching, you know, be ready for a great tutorial in auditing. Thank you very much. Members of the board and public, we have a very packed next 90 minutes. We have, we're full of guests. We have our external auditors. We have two parent presentations and then a brief agenda review for the voting meeting at 7. I will also tell you, as a precursor to the end of the meeting, we will need a one-item executive session, just a one-item executive session, and I'll read the reason as we get closer to the end of the meeting, and go from there. So, let's jump right in by having me tell you that this is the annual time of the year when all school districts must complete their annual required external audit, and they are actually due on October 15th, but we have a 1-month grace period till November 15th. The good news is that I think once you see tonight's audit and know that the audit committee at 4 o'clock approved and recommended your acceptance of this audit, that we will be able to actually send our audit to New York State tomorrow. So, I, again, preface this by saying our audit committee reviewed this external audit. It is required. We have had the pleasure of working with Drescher and Malecki for a number of years, and I am going to call on Matt Montalvo, Kyle Petoniak, also known as Ben Gazzara to many of us in the district, a young Ben Gazzara, to come forward and make the presentation. Matt, would you come forward, please? I think everybody's familiar with Matt.
Sometimes, you know, he used to have the glasses and was got the contacts.
He changes it up depending on the audits. If the audit's not so good, he wears a real suit and a vest. But if you got a good audit, he's very casual. I don't know, I just made that up. Go ahead, man.
Well, thanks for having me. As the superintendent said, we met previously with the audit committee. We went through our required communications. I will present the results of that to the full board here tonight. So I'll get into the PowerPoint here. The first thing we clarify is what our responsibility is for the audit, the external audit, and that is to form and express an opinion on your financial statement. So we don't take responsibility for preparing the books and the record. That's management's responsibility. We, as an independent third party, we review the records, we perform our audit procedures, and then we provide an opinion that they fairly represent the district's financial position. So you can rely on that information as a board. Outside third parties can rely on your information going forward. So we do plan on moving forward with what's referred to as an unmodified opinion, and that's a clean opinion on the financial statement, the best you can do from an audit standpoint. As I mentioned, we went through the other communications with the audit committee. Some of the highlights here is we clarify our independence as essential to our auditing standards. So we need to be free of conflicts of interest with the districts. That's what allows us to be objective in performing the audit. All of our staff members allows them to be objective in performing the audit tests and then ultimately providing that opinion on the financial statements. And then as far as other matters, we didn't have any disagreements or difficulties in performing the audit. Management staff, everybody was cooperative and gave us full access to the books and the records. So any questions on those before I move forward into more of the financial side? Okay. So starting with the general fund, this kind of provides a trend of the activity within the general fund, so simply your revenues versus expenditures over the last 5 years. And you could see a favorable trend where your revenues exceeded your expenditures in each of the last 5 years. Similar to other New York State school districts, as far as the trend that we've seen, for 23-24, revenues exceeded expenditures approximately $7 million. So that's the amount your fund balance in the general fund increased from the prior year. So certainly a favorable trend. I think when you project going forward, I think you you want to anticipate maybe a more difficult trend from the expenditure side, and on the revenue side, we're seeing some of those major revenue sources starting to flatten out a little bit, or some of them being of a one-time nature as it relates to the federal stimulus funding, some of those interest earnings that we've captured over the last couple of years, so going forward. But favorable trend, how that impacted your fund balance on the next slide. You can see total fund balance for 22-23 was about $45.6 million, so that encompasses all of these components, and that increased $7 million to approximately $52.7 million at the end of 23-24. So the reason it's presented this way as far as the different components, this shows the different restrictions on those funds. So it's not all unassigned or unrestricted funds. The blue portion represents your unassigned, that's about $7.6 million, and that's right at the 4% limit. So you're limited under real property tax law of 4% of your next year's appropriations. So you stayed within that limit over the last 5 years. That was 7.6. Then about $2 million in the green portion, that represents assigned fund balance. So primarily what you appropriate in your budget to essentially close the gap between revenues and expenditures. So that was about 1.8, I believe, of that $2 million. And then the largest portion being restricted fund balance, or your legal reserves that you're allowed under New York State. The largest portions being what you set aside for future obligations related to the pension systems, your workers' compensation obligations, and then future employee benefits when employees separate from the districts and you have to pay out those contractual benefits. So $43 million at the end of 23-24, stable position. You can see a very favorable trend over the last 5 years, and you're well positioned to kind of handle those budget challenges going forward, as well as the exposures that I talked about being workers' comp and your future liabilities. This is just to revisit that 4% calculation that you were in compliance with this on the unassigned. And then just briefly to touch on the school lunch fund, this is another major fund of the district. Outside of that 2021 year, which we know was kind of a different situation, you can see the last 3 fiscal years have been a little bit more predictable, more of a break-even point trend, which is really how this fund's supposed to operate. So no real issues within the school lunch fund, and then the fund balances here. You can see some stability over the last 3 years, but still adequate to give you liquidity to handle those operating expenditures going forward. So again, final observations from a financial side, stable condition within those funds. You were able to fund some of those necessary reserves going forward and stay within the 4%. From an audit standpoint, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Those would be reportable findings. So we did not have any financial statement findings or compliance findings because you're also subject to a federal audit of your federal programs. So all in all, a fairly clean audit. We appreciated like I said, the cooperation from management and staff. Everybody was very professional, and it was a smooth process. Any questions?
I'd like to make a few statements, but I'd rather have the board entertain questions first. Yeah. So, first of all, thank you, Drescher and Malecki. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kyle, for your work. Secondly, thank the leadership of Becky, Julie, and of course we have Richard here. When Matt talks about the single audit, he's responsible for grant financing, and of course Marcasia is here as well. She's one of our accountants. So I want to congratulate the 4 of you for the work that you've done. That's number 1. And thank Drescher and Malecki. Number 2, when you're in a municipality or a school district and you hear the words no material weaknesses, no findings, no corrections, I think it should bode confidence in the taxpaying public that the money that we're using for education is being used in the most appropriate and most cost-minded professional manner possible. So I'm really proud of that. And when you look at our reserves, we continually hear about changes in foundation aid funding, fiscal cliffs, and all the things that we need to do. I feel that we've been able to do a couple of things. Walk away from ARP funds, walk away from casino funds, not walk away from any staff member or program, and still maintain a very healthy balance of reserves that would keep this district financially sound for a long time. And just to get a little bit deeper into the weeds, with that restricted fund balance amount, I think it's noteworthy to say that in three cases, we have hit the top rung of what we're legally allowed to keep. Number one, we have the full 4% of unrestricted money. We've been able to keep that for the last 5 years. Actually, going back some. I'm just going to throw a little jab in here, but we are fully funded to the actuarial top confidence level in workers' compensation. Workers' compensation. That might be for one of the board members. And also, we are fully funded to the legal limit in the TRS account. Beyond that, I believe we've wisely put money into the employee retirement and benefits account and health benefits account reserve, because as we know, as we experienced in last year's budget when the rates went up 9%, higher than we ever have seen them in my tenure here, and the retiree benefits going up 18.25%, I think we're fiscally smart and sound by putting those restricted dollars into those accounts, because health benefits, as you all know, are very unpredictable at this time. I guess the bottom line is we've put the district in the best fiscal shape we could, and we will continue to do that on behalf of the taxpayers and on behalf of the students and the parents of this community. So I'm really proud that we have no findings, no cap needs to be written, no material weaknesses need to be corrected. That doesn't mean we're perfect. We're always striving to be better. We reviewed in the audit committee our internal claims report, where the internal claims auditor looks at every single expenditure we made, and this is an area where we could get better. In the months of July and August, we spent $16,495,000, and we had 3 exceptions. Historically, that used to be 36 exceptions, but 3 is 3 too many, so we do need to improve there. And we continue to work with staff on doing that, but it's still a pretty proud record of improvement in terms of the day-to-day operations. And those 3 exceptions only totaled $6,000, and it's still $6,000 too much that we didn't have purchase orders in for. So I say that with a great deal of pride, a great deal of comfort in knowing that we are doing the best with our money for the taxpayers of the city while maintaining our primary mission, and that's to educate kids. So we appreciate you, and we thank you, and before you know it, we'll see you again next year.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
We're going to move. We have 2 parent presentations, and Ms. Adams, we're going to get you ready first. Let me get you.
He looks like Ben Gazzara.
I think he looks like a young Ben Gazzara. Tony, you might be the only old enough person to remember Ben Gazzara.
Oh, yeah, he was great.
Yeah, what was he in?
He played El Capone once.
Did he?
Yeah.
All right. These are the interludes we have while we're waiting for the presenter. So let me just give you a little bit of a preamble before the next 2 presenters. It has not been lost on anyone, I don't think, that follows our board meetings, that we are talking about more and more children that are coming into our district with autism, and that we have done our very best. Again, always ways to improve, but we've done our very best in terms of programming students with autism. And there has been a recent development or a building of a special education parent group that we support. And one of the first two topics that we're going to talk about tonight is autism. I'm really pleased to see members of our central special education team here. Cheryl and Frank, it's good to see you here. Thank you very much. But we're also really pleased that Miss Adams, who is a teacher in Sweet Home, sorry. I know, that's the only negative I can think of. That's the only negative I can think of, is here this evening, and she blesses us. She blesses us with a child.
Oh, thank you.
She blesses us with a child who attends Kelfis.
Yep.
And we first of all thank you for trusting us with your child.
Yeah, thank you. Trust you with two children, actually.
Yeah, your daughter?
She is at Abbott.
She's at Abbott. What grade?
6.
So I just want to say thank you for trusting us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Here.
And I know why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do during your day job?
Oh, I actually have a slide for that. So.
Then take it away. Then take it away.
So thanks for having me. Thanks for giving SEPTA this time. So I'm here to talk about autism spectrum disorder. ASD is a neurological and developmental difference that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've lived in Niagara Falls my whole life. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education, a master's degree in literacy. I have several certifications, early childhood, exceptional education, and literacy as well. I'm a certified reading recovery teacher, and this is my 20th year teaching, which is crazy to think about, but 12 more years to go. So currently I'm a literacy coach in Sweet Home in a pre-K to 5 building. So all of those things are great, and all of those pieces of paper give me certain tools to do my job, but this guy right here gives me the right to tell you all about autism and gives me firsthand experience. So this is Mac. He is 8, and like Mr. Laurie said, he goes to Kelfis. He's in 3rd grade. He was diagnosed with autism at age 2. He has many talents, strengths, and struggles, just like all of our students. He did not begin in Niagara Falls School District. He began at Summit. Actually, he was 2.5 when he started their early autism program. That gave him a good foundation, but when he turned 6, we wanted more for him. And Ms. Mateer took us on a tour, and we toured lots of buildings, and we settled at Cataract with Mr. Wotan and Ms. Queso. And so this year is his first year at Kelfis. So that's his journey so far at Niagara Falls. So I have some goals for tonight. I will try and move quickly. But first, what is autism and what it isn't? I think there's a lot of confusion, and even me, being an educator for as long as I've been, it wasn't until I had an autistic child that I really understood autism, what it is and isn't. Also, just the understanding of the increase in autism diagnosis. I know that's been a topic of conversation too here with the uptick of autistic students, and then just the changes in how autism is being diagnosed and the support need levels. Lastly is just supporting autistic students, just suggestions for me, and also just training for supporting staff who work with high needs autistic students, okay? So I'm a teacher, and I start every professional development with some questions. So I don't know if you want to write down your answers, because we will come back to these at the end, but I always launch every PD with, what do you think you know, and what are you wondering? So if you just take a second, anyone can participate. You don't need to share it, but just jot down, what do you think you know about autism and autistic individuals, and then what are you wondering about autism and autistic individuals? And I would hope that by the end I would answer most of your questions, but those are also things that if you want to give me your questions at the end, I can always reach out to you via email as well. So if you feel like you want to keep that in your head or write it down, whatever your style is, we'll come back to this at the end. It's my last slide. Okay. So this is my favorite quote about autistic individuals: if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And so just like we are all individuals, every autistic individual is different. So often autistic individuals get clumped into a certain subgroup. So here's what autism is and what it isn't. So the autism spectrum disorder is not linear. It's been my experience in education for 20 years that I've heard people say things like, "Oh, he's very autistic," or "No, he's not that autistic." And so some of those things come out just from miseducation. So really, an autistic individual is an autistic individual, and the spectrum looks more like this wheel of different areas of need. And so every autistic person has different needs. And terms like high functioning, low functioning, and even Asperger's syndrome have kind of faded to the wayside, although medical professionals do still use them. But the autistic community has definitely come out and said, you know, there's no way to, when I think about my son, he's non-speaking for the most part, semi-verbal, but his brain is extremely high functioning. He just can't show it like you and I can. So when I think about Mac, I think about his wheel, and there are people in this room who know Mac. So when I think about Mac, I don't think a lot about aggression with him on a typical day. For the most part, he is non-aggressive. However, if you take away a preferred item, he's gonna get aggressive. So it's interesting to think that even within each part of the wheel, there's varying degrees based on different times of day or different situations. Also at home, there's no social difficulty with Mac. He is interacting with us, he's playing with us, he's having a great time. If we were to go to a party with friends in a backyard and all the kids are playing, my kid's playing by himself. So social difficulty, maybe only in large situations. If I bring him to a Sabres game, he's a little more reserved. It's loud, tons of people. So even in those little areas, it's hard to pigeonhole and say, oh, he's always aggressive or he's always having a difficulty socially. So good thing to think about. So this is just what it is, what it isn't. Autism is social differences, repetitive behaviors, sensory overwhelm, tendency to mask. Masking very much seen in girls with autism. So the ability to mask is the ability to mimic behaviors and present as typical when really you're trying really hard to look like everyone else. And then usually what happens is you go into like a little bit of a meltdown after. Intense mental interest and needing alone time to regulate. What it isn't is something to pity, lack of intelligence by any means, caused by vaccines. It's not scientifically proven. Something that needs to be fixed, a lesser version of life. I will tell you, my son lives his best life every day, all day. Those that know him know that. And a lack of empathy. So that's my first goal for you. Hopefully that cleared up some maybe misconceptions, if you had some, of what autism is and isn't. So understanding what the increase, this is a lot of words, I'm gonna paraphrase it for you. This middle part right here, in 2000, around 1 in every 150 children had an autism diagnosis. This rose to 1 in 44 children in 2018, and then 1 in 36 children in 2020. My next slide will show just some ideas or theories as to why that is the case. Yeah, but this last paragraph is so important because it kind of hit me right in the chest. So additionally, the CDC reported that significantly more Black and Hispanic children and those from various socioeconomic backgrounds had received a diagnosis, whereas in the past, white children from higher socioeconomic status would have been more likely to be diagnosed autistic. Very interesting. So this is from Simply Psychology, April 2024. So here's some reasons, right? There's an increased understanding of autistic experiences. I would say that social media has definitely played a role of autistic individuals creating channels and educating people. I would say, I'm going to skip the middle one because I'm coming back to that. Understanding that anyone, any gender, age, race can be autistic. Lots of misconceptions in the past. Masking, again, acknowledging that there are autistic people out there in the world who mask and it aren't the typical what people think of when they think of an autistic individual. Also, the stigma has been reduced with initiatives like DEI and inclusion, mainstreaming students into classrooms, having 813 classrooms in public school, not just in agencies, correct? And then recognizing that people can have coexisting conditions like autism and ADHD. So changes in the diagnostic criteria, I'm not gonna dig too deep into this, and the next slide is a little visually overwhelming, but it was a good comparison. This is just the progression of how medical professionals have diagnosed autism from 1980 till 2013. 2013 is the most recent. And so, to sum it up, even when I started my teaching career, there was a very stark line between, oh, this kid is autistic, this kid has Asperger's disorder, this kid is PDD-NOS, all of these different things. However, now everyone is under the umbrella of autism spectrum disorder. And now, when we are diagnosing with autism, we are assigning a support level, so mild, moderate, severe, all around how much support that individual needs in society, if that makes sense. So this is, in theory, one of the reasons why there's been an uptick in autism diagnosis, because when we say 1 in 36, that one person could be a level 1, who before didn't even think they had autism. So something to think about. So here are the 3 levels of autism. It's interesting because when my son was diagnosed, I think they said like 1.5, and I didn't know what that meant. And now as he's gotten older, I don't know where I would put him because in some situations I would say he's level 2, in some situations it's level 3. But I would say typically, I think it's safe to say that the kids in our 813 classrooms or our exceptional classrooms require substantial support, right? We have multiple teachers in the room, aides in the room. They require a lot of support with outside services, social communication skills. So you can see all the varying levels of autism. This is how it's being diagnosed now, as opposed to even in 2012. Okay, I'm moving through. So supporting autistic students in public schools is just like supporting all other students. We try our best to give everyone what they need. So I was thinking about 4 little areas: environment, language, approach, and families. I did find a video for this next one, so it's not just me speaking at you. It's just a quick 3-minute video. This would be like the Cadillac of environments for me. But this requires space, which I don't know if you are struggling with space, but my district is struggling with space for sure. It requires funding and all of those things. So this is just a video about a sensory space. Oops. How do I get it to play? Oh, Ray's gonna do it. Thank you, Ray.
Research shows that if the student's in the right mindset and they get their sensory needs met, they're going to be much better learners.
Hands to your heart space. Take a deep breath in.
The sensory room is probably my most important piece of the day. Students go to the sensory room in order to calm their bodies and get all the emotions out and stabilize themselves so they're ready to learn and they're happy.
When we designed the sensory room, we actually took the entire room apart. We carpeted the floor so that we could absorb some of the sound. We put the shades on the ceiling to change the light So when they walk in that room, they feel the change.
My class specifically, we utilize the room once a day for a 30-minute break.
First thing that they do is go on the ball and they bounce to a metronome. It's really a way to ground them into the space and give them some sensory input before we have them go out into the room.
We're going to do our rotation now, okay?
So there's different stations in the sensory room, and some of my students love specific stations. One in particular loves the punching bag and the ropes. He's able to get all that anger and frustration out, so that calms him down. Whereas another student, I know he needs calming movements, so he's on the swing going back and forth.
Another area in the room is the crash pad. You will see students that have sensory issues bump into walls, bang their head. So what we've created is a safe space to crash into. And then there's the light wall. You could use your hands, you could use your feet. There's different games that are programmed on there.
Yes, good girl.
We also work on balance and coordination. The walking path works on all of those, and they have to right themselves, correct their body in space. We have 10-pound slam balls. Some students just need to come in, pick something heavy up and throw it. That's the essence of a sensory room. You're putting materials in there that are appropriate, so a student's not throwing a chair. And at the end, when they finish with their stations, they lay on the floor and they're squished. So everything that we do in there is predictable. There's a set sequence.
We're all done with sensory room. We're going to walk back to our class.
So after the sensory room, they're able to focus more. They're quieter and their hands are to themselves and they're able to listen to my directions. We're here, we came from sensory room, we're ready to learn.
How does the sensory room make you feel? Happy.
I feel like adults would enjoy a sensory room as well. At both schools that Mac has gone to, you guys have done a really great job at purchasing all kinds of different sensory equipment. This was just different to me because this was like a set space, and I know that has so many limitations, but something to think about, utilizing a space that's being unused for schools that have these classrooms. This is a free thing that we can do. So we can adjust our language, and it's completely free. So instead of using deficit-focused language when we're speaking about our students that are autistic and saying low functioning, we can change our language to high support needs. We can change suffers from autism to just is autistic. It's perfectly acceptable. More and more autistic people on social media are getting away from nonverbal. It's interesting, I follow a page that's teaching kids how to type to communicate. Not autistic students who are non-speaking are typing to communicate, and actually saying nonverbal has a negative connotation, that I'm stupid or that I can't think, or that I don't have verbiage, but I do. I have verbiage in my brain. I just can't get it out. So nonverbal to non-speaking. This one's hard. We say things are normal. I've had to really shift my language of that's not normal to that's not typical, and abnormal to neurodivergent. But that's a free little thing we can change as a district. So approach, two different kinds of approaches. I know you've already lined people up, which is great. These are kind of the big two. Mac has had a lot of ABA, and I will say that ABA, which is the approach that Summit uses with him, worked for him when he was about 2.5 till about the time, like maybe 6 years old. And now, as I've been learning more about him and working with him at home, I've noticed that the goal-oriented kind of approach where you do this work, then I give this to you, instead of floor time approach, which is let's do the work while you're doing something preferred, has actually shifted for him. And his therapists are seeing that. We've had great support at Calfus. I advocated for a play-based approach for him for speech. He has a wonderful speech therapist, which I'll shout out later in the presentation. But the best sessions he's having are in the PT corner on the trampoline. on the, bouncing on the ball. And so these are just two different approaches. I know, and I have an example of ABA. It's very quick. I don't know, Ray, sorry. This is just an example of what ABA would look like.
As I'm in the midst of applying for residency right now, wish me luck, Grammarly has again been a lifesaver with my application.
I have something to show you. Go sit on your chair. I know you were under the table. I'm gonna ask you some questions and then we can play a new game or we can play chase.
So ABA is
It's up to you.
typically done at a
I
table.
love chase too, but first, I have
Teacher
some
and
questions.
student.
You ready? You are gonna do it. Oh, they're stuck in the box. I bet you know what this is. You ready? Nope. We're not gonna be able to play until we're all done. Come have a seat.
So
Okay,
this is
look.
like a work
Let's do
first, then
5
play.
things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and then we'll play chase. I'm sorry. Are you okay? So look. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Leave them right here. When you get all 5, we will go play chase. Okay? You ready? I'm gonna ask you questions. Fix your chair. Have a seat. Okay.
Excuse me.
What is this?
Cookies.
Cookies. What do you do with cookies? Eat them. Chomp, 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 chomp. Hey, what kind of cookies are these?
Chummy. Chocolate.
Chocolate. Here's something else you can eat. What is this?
Apple.
Apple. That's right. Okay, I have a few more. Let's see. Nice job answering the questions about the foods. Next one. What is that?
A car.
It is. What would you call this?
A car.
Hey, are they the same?
Yes.
They are. And is this the same?
No.
No, what is this?
A bus.
You're right. Okay, let's give you number 2. Thank you. 3 more. Fix your chair, or you can stand, but be at the table. Okay, let's see. These are really easy and fast, okay? I'm gonna ask you, what color?
Ooh. Pink. Dark pink.
Dark pink. I can't trick you. There's the 3rd one. Okay. Gonna ask you 2 more kinds of things. You ready? Then we'll play chase. Where does a fish live?
It's a sea.
In the sea. Good answer. And where does a zebra live?
At the zoo.
You might see him at the zoo. Nice job. Okay, last thing, no cards. I just want you to do what I do. Can you do this? Good. You want to splat it? Splat. Can you do this? Try again. Can you do this? Good. Can you do this? Nice. I don't want you to splat. I want you to do what I do. Can you do this? Good job. Now touch your nose.
No.
Touch your head. Touch your ears. Touch your belly. Where's your belly? Touch your belly. Good. Okay. Hey, catch my spider. What's this?
No.
Nose. Last one. You got all 5. You ready for chase? Okay, I'm gonna get you. On your mark. Get set.
So that's a pretty successful ABA discrete trial session. You do all the work, you get to play chase. The next kind is floor time. I think I'm gonna skip this one, Ray, though, the video. I don't wanna run out of time. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's floor time, it's play, we're doing the preferred activity while we're learning, okay? The last thing is families. So you're already engaging with families by letting the special ed PTA come here and give these presentations, so thank you for that. Just building relationships, but for staff in school, it's building relationships with parents, getting their concern, understanding their background, keeping lines of communication open. The communication that we've had with educators in the district has been wonderful. Starting a communication log, whether it's through the apps that they use or a notebook or email, And establishing communication preferences, because not all communication preferences work for everyone the same way. I know we've brought up as SEPTA this Autism Advisory Committee recommendation of having more parent voice, and not even parent voice for decisions, but just giving our expertise with our children. So thank you for thinking about that as well. I had to give a shout out to Mac's team. These are all the employees that impact him, and I don't think it's everyone. So he's in an 813 classroom. That's 8 students, 1 special ed teacher, 3 aides. He gets speech therapy and occupational therapy. His teacher is Mr. Pacheco, Mr. Joey Krebs, Alyssa Printup, Miss Roseanne Colon, Natalie Gismondi is his speech therapist, Carly Leo is his OT, Chelsea Shelter, I emailed her 1 week before school that I wanted to change speech goals, and she emailed me immediately. School hadn't even started yet, and she set up the meeting. So these are wonderful people. I had to give a shout out to the PE team at Calfis. They also, I send out a 1-pager about my son before school year begins. It's kind of like his whole bio and things that work with him and things don't. We sent it to everyone. Amanda LaChance emailed us back and said, I'm gonna be setting up the gym, bring him in so he can get used to the building. Like, those are the types of things. And I know that she's advocated for tons of sensory equipment in the gym. She's installed a swing in the gym. It's just amazing. And also Mrs. Urban, so she's our SEPTA member. Hello, I saw you there. She came to our SEPTA meeting and she's here tonight. So it's really wonderful that we already have a supportive staff. The last thing would be training and supporting staff, and we're already on our way. I've heard different things are happening, which is wonderful. Just, again, sensory-friendly environment, and guess what? All students benefit from this. It could even happen in general ed classrooms. You'll see a lot of these things in the exceptional classrooms in this district. You'll hear me call it exceptional classroom instead of 813. It's something I'm working on in my verbiage too. It's just losing that stigma of 813, you know, that it's sometimes a negative connotation. So these are all just items that could be in the classroom that just help with the classroom environment. And I also put, don't forget special areas. So I know we don't have adaptive physical education, but it could be something you think about in the future as a district. And, you know, my son goes to speech therapy, but benefits from play-based, but works in the PT corner. But if the PT corner isn't available, he's got to sit at the table. So, you know, is there a play-based speech environment we could create? So once again, different language, the special ed class. No, we can just call them Mr. Smith's class. You know, when we got the an 813 classroom at our building, everyone was calling it 813. And how about we just call it Mrs. McEwen's class? Oh, yeah. It's just like any other class in the building. These are things that I've actually heard. They're always screaming in there. I hope we can find a way to help them with regulation. Those kids won't be able to do this. How can we make this school accessible for everyone? We don't have that support here. Shifted to, it's our job to support your child. And so these are just shifts that are easy to make and free. Training, support. So often we just think about classroom teachers. We need to think about teacher aides. We need to think about speech therapists and administrators and social workers and counselors and special area teachers and bus drivers and aides and you guys. So often it's hard. You open up a classroom and there's so many people that cross paths with my son, right? All throughout the day. This is just a suggestion from me, and it came from the Williamsville SEPTA. His name is David Whalen. I don't know if anyone knows him, but I know we have partnerships with Niagara University. He works through Niagara University. He actually trains police, fire, first responders, but he does a lot of training in education. He's worked with the Williamsville School District as well, so if you were thinking about teacher aides or bus drivers or support staff, might be someone to look into. I know you got this guy coming, so yay for that. And so this will definitely check off that ABA box and give more information or more background for teachers and more training for teachers and even aides on how to do ABA with kids. The last thing I really want to advocate for is training on AAC devices. If you've never seen one before, I'm going to show you some videos of my son. When he was in his last year at Summit, so he was in kindergarten, I advocated very strongly for him to have this device because I knew that it was in there, and I needed a way for him to get it out. So Mac and I believe some of his classmates use a combination of verbal speech and AAC. And so it's imperative that all adults working with them know the value of the device and how to model it and how it can add and how to add language to the device that's needed in school. So I have 2 videos of him, and I just want to show you how when people are trained and when parents are trained and when everyone's modeling the device, the difference like 1 year can make. Actually, it might be 1 year or 1.5. So Ray, can you play the first video? This is the second day with his device. He's watching a video on TV.
Okay.
Again. I want to listen. All the colors.
Again. Again.
Again. Again.
Again.
Mac, do you want to listen again?
Yes.
Again.
So that was like day 2 with the device, which is pretty remarkable. And I don't know if that's typical, but as soon as this device was put in front of him, he knew how to use it. This, I want to say, is about 1.5 years later. You can see the progress. He says,
Cheese.
he thinks
Okay.
I'm.
Oh, you're saying cheese for the camera? Hey, what do you want?
Cheese.
Oh, what do you want?
Cheese.
Yes. Can you tell me what you want on your device?
It's ready. Veggie straws. I want to eat cereal.
You want?
I want to play iPad.
Wow, 2 things? Look at me. You want to eat cereal and play your iPad? Yes. Great job telling me what you need.
Papa. Papa.
Oh, what cereal do you want? Ooh, that looks good. Do you need help?
Yes.
Say, I need help.
Ha.
No, look at Mom. Say, I need help.
Hurry, help.
Good job.
So many speech therapists before our lovely speech therapist Carly, who finally listened to me, were like, oh no, he's got to do this first, he's got to do this system first, and then so often I think it's a misconception that device, he'll never speak himself, but what it does is I'm thinking this, I want to communicate this, I said this, and now I can mimic it because it's my words, it's not somebody saying, say this, say this. And so his speech has grown like leaps and bounds with the AAC device. But if you got to know how to use it, right? And that's tricky. So I just want to end with some strengths and abilities, because I know we talk about disabilities, we talk about everything that can't happen. People with autism have great attention to detail, excellent long-term memory, unique thought processes, deep focus, integrity, honesty, and loyalty, visual skills, observation skills, and in-depth knowledge, and they are creative and imaginative. So this is the last slide. I don't know if, when I asked you this in the beginning, if there were things you thought you knew and that has now changed, or if any questions of yours were answered, but I'm happy to answer questions now, and I hope that this gave you a broader view on autism. Hi, Ross. Yeah, Mr. Petrosi.
The device, the speaking device, you said that it's difficult to learn for the parent.
So I think we had a lot of support from our speech therapist, and we were at Summit at the time. And so it is a process to actually get a device as well. So you have to go through a trial period to see if it's actually beneficial for your child. Once the speech therapist can prove that it's beneficial for your child, then you can request it through your insurance. If your insurance doesn't cover it, it goes through Medicaid. I know, you're shaking your head. It should be free, right? It should be.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. So nothing for special education is cheap or readily available, which is terrible, but the trial part is really where the speech therapist would work with parents and say, hey, it's really working. I want you to practice this at home. Or, just like any speech therapist would communicate with families.
But is it like when you were learning, was it difficult? I'm impressed at what a year did.
Yeah.
I mean, that was remarkable, and I'm
Yeah.
even more remarkable if you had if it was difficult for you to learn. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, well, technology is great. So, I mean, the speech therapists would send us videos and say, hey, here's how you can add a button, and here's what we did today. So there was so much clear communication that, no, I don't think it was hard for us, tech-wise or modeling it. For us, it's harder just to remember to model it all the time. So we'll be trying to get him to do something or trying to communicate with him, and then I'm like, go get the device. The device should always be out. He should be carrying it, or it should be here, or it should be here. And we're doing better with that. Some days are better than others, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Anybody?
Let me
Tony.
ask this question. So, of course, we mentioned the word insurance,
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, in actuality, a family that may not have the means, this could set them back? More.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about the actual process when you get denied. But I do know that AAC devices, I don't want to say I do know. I could get more information on this, but I'm pretty certain that if it's proven through the trial period and that child has Medicaid,
Yeah.
that a Medicaid budget and things like that. So I know it's hard to actually acquire. Is there?
Cheryl.
Maybe Cheryl can, yeah.
Can I speak to that as far as the district?
Come up, why don't you come up here, Cheryl? Come up. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thanks for
let me
saving me.
welcome Ms. Cheryl Mateer to a board meeting.
So, it is a process.
It's a long process,
and over the
too.
last probably a couple of years, maybe 3, we actually found a company, it's called AbleNet.
Oh, that's what we have ours through.
Yeah, so it's not a contract with Niagara Falls Schools. It's a company that actually works directly with the parent. And the parent does need our speech therapist to say, oh, we tried a lesser device, right? Something that's not as high tech as an iPad would be. And it kind of goes through a process. And once that speech therapist gets to a place that says, Mac can use this and he will be able to communicate with this, the AbleNet does all the work for the parent and processes it through the insurance or Medicaid. Typically, I think parents are pretty successful with it if they have the speech pathologist that fills out the paperwork.
Yeah, I would say that the speech pathologist did the legwork.
Yeah.
And then we got the device delivered to our house.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just an iPad, and it's one app.
Yeah.
It's the app of the program. That's it.
Yeah, because when I heard the insurance word, I
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the bigger roadblock is how long the process is.
Yeah.
In proving
Yeah.
that it's necessary.
Yeah. I
How
want to make a
how
point.
long
Go
is
ahead,
it?
Russ.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
No.
How long is the process?
I believe we trialed the device the whole month of November, the whole month of December, and then she had enough data to put it in.
So he is using it all that time. It's just a matter of solidifying that it becomes his. And once they do that, it's that child's iPad, right? So if he were to drop it in the toilet and it broke,
Yeah.
AbleNet will
AbleNet.
replace it for free.
Yeah.
So, and I think it comes with a big,
The case is
yeah. Almost
almost indestructible. It has he can wear it around his neck. He walks to speech with it around his neck.
What process is the delay? Is it the insurance company? Is it Medicaid?
Yeah, I think you just have to, just like everything, you have to submit, and then they have to review, and then they have to get back. I believe we got his actual device. November, December was the trial. We put it in. I believe we had the device by February. So it's not as long as I've waited for other things.
Okay, but were you using the device from all that time?
They had a school, they had a school device, so when he was at Summit, they had devices that they would trial with kids, and I don't know if we have those here,
Well,
but.
just like I think you're talking about trialing iPads, right, in the younger grades. So I've talked with Ray about, this would be something that we could trial until a student gets their own.
Right.
Okay, so in other words, from, I don't want to say it wrong, day one, the process starts, he gets his iPad quickly. And he's using that, once it's proven that it's going to benefit him, then you get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not spending months without the product.
No.
Why someone decides if they're going to pay for it.
No, because you need a device to trial as
Okay.
well, yeah. And then you keep the trial device until your device shows up.
I just want to make sure we're
Yeah,
not, because.
no problem.
Got it.
Yeah.
So.
Nothing is easy.
No, but a couple of things, if I may. First of
Yeah.
all, that was an excellent presentation.
Oh,
Yeah, it was.
thanks.
Just an
Thanks.
absolutely excellent
Oh,
presentation, and my two questions got answered in there.
Oh, good.
I love in the initial, one of them was answered in I wrote down the wheel at the beginning. That was really clarifying for me, because there are different behaviors at different severities is what I wrote down. That was one of the questions. So just a couple of things. I appreciate Cheryl and Frank and Ashley and the work and the comments you made about trying to develop more sensory rooms in our school. Cheryl comes every Wednesday at finance and says we need to buy this for our sensory room. And I think I've been agreeable to it, but we really need to continue to develop our sensory rooms. That was so powerful to watch that.
Yeah.
Second thing that struck me was how different the role of a teacher is now. I mean, it's just a whole different, it's a whole different skill set, it's a whole different art. But I thought that was so powerful because it showed the art of what a teacher now does versus what you may have conceptualized or what I did when I was a special education teacher 40 years ago. That was so powerful. Thirdly, we have been a district that relied more on ABA. I didn't know what that was called. And I know one of the ways that we need to continue to staff develop and learn is through floor time.
Yeah, just play-based.
Yeah, we're more of an ABA district as I think.
And I will say, most districts are.
Yeah.
Yeah, most districts are. It's more conducive to a school environment, if that makes sense. It's table and chair, it's sit here, do this, that kind of thing.
We're an ABA district, and I think we need to be both because we've got to meet the needs of kids.
Yeah,
so
it's good to have both.
That's a note I took. I also know that Ray has been working very hard to get those iPads in schools quickly with the assistive app, so that we can bridge those gaps in time to get kids what they need. And finally, what I would say is where SEPTA, you, others, parents, us, really, I know there's insurance, I know there's iPads, but there's also something called navigation. And our parents need support in navigation.
Yes.
Because we can fight the insurance. If you don't, you have to get on the field to fight navigation, to fight all that stuff. We, as a SEPTA group, one of the things I could envision is the advocacy and support you can give to parents that don't have maybe the wherewithal, the knowledge, the background that you do. And it's oftentimes beyond what Cheryl and Frank and Ashley can do, and even the teachers know. So I see that as a really key role for the SEPTA group from which you came from to present this. It's navigation. Just, can you imagine? Our parents, I would need that help, and I've been in
where do you
education.
begin?
Where do you start?
Yeah.
And I think that's a real powerful part of your group. So I just wanted to thank you. It's a wonderful presentation. It really is.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Can I make one more?
You can. This will be the last board meeting if you keep talking like that, I'm sure.
I know. She put up Dr. Marcus Tomir from Canisius College. He actually is coming to Calfus on Monday.
Yeah, I knew that. That's why I put him in there.
Did you? To observe, and then he's going to support our teachers and staff, everybody in the classroom as a whole. So very excited to have him starting.
And I do credit you at the beginning of the year. Our associates were all in this room getting their training. We need to do more of that. These are notes I made. And again, Tomir, if I'm learning and reading about him, he's an ABA guy.
Yeah.
He's
He
an
is,
EBA guy.
but he's kind of both too.
Yeah.
He's really good at working with our teachers and kind of going along the path of what does Niagara Falls,
Is that
exceptional classrooms look like, so.
We're changing language. It's free. Changing language is free.
And the final thing I would say is something that we have to look forward to, and we really need to do it today, is that our 813 classes are in primary buildings. We hear Califas, Bond,
Yeah.
Cataract. We are very quickly moving to have those children go to intermediate classes and middle schools. And we have a lot of work ahead of us to prepare the staff and the schools in those areas to be prepared for what we just saw as the ideal.
Calfas is, the way that Calfas is built,
Yeah.
beautiful place for students with autism who are elopers. The playground is in the center. I mean, this is it's something that I didn't put in here, but thinking about the buildings that have exceptional classroom fences around the playground so that kids can go out and play, those kinds of things. So, and thinking about, what buildings are the most accessible.
Right.
Yeah.
I wish I could say we thought of that when we did it, but
Yeah.
it's a great benefit.
Oh,
and
it's a
good
great
point.
benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Well,
you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Excellent
thanks.
job. Yeah.
Thanks.
We're-
One more quick question.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. So your group, your parent group.
Yes.
How many members do we have right now?
Jackie, how many members? We're up to 68. 68. It's big.
That's big, yeah.
And our meetings are well attended. We welcome anyone to come. We are third Monday of every month, so the 21st.
6 p.m. upstairs conference room.
Yeah,
Door two.
door two.
Very good.
Door two.
For another month.
We are a growing
Well,
group.
thanks for coming.
Yeah. I think-
So let's stay in the event. We have another parent. Tonight is really a chance to meet some parents. And of course, this is another special parent who I had an opportunity to meet through our district parent committee initially. And I have to say, this is Marlo Stearns, and in a very sincere way, she just has a knack of knowing and a knack of making people feel good. And I'm going to leave it at that, and I think you know what I'm speaking of, Mrs. Stearns. You have this innate sense about when something needs to be said to or for somebody. So I thank you personally for that. And as I did with Miss Adams, I wanted to say thank you for trusting us with your now 7th grade
Yes.
daughter.
Yep.
And I'm going to say 10th.
Junior.
A senior already.
She's a junior.
She's a junior.
Yeah, at the high
Junior, I'm
school.
sorry.
Yep.
So you've been on the journey with us. You now have a 7th grader at LaSalle and an 11th grader at Niagara Falls High School. And much like Miss Adams, again, in a parallel, dyslexia has been an issue close and near and dear to her heart. And we've had many, many conversations about it. And I'll let you speak about your own children, but it's very interesting, and I will be quiet after this, it's very interesting that that New York State had an open forum for public comment between now and December 22nd with respect to some of the things that you're going to talk about. And I think this is timely also for the board to hear in light of where New York State is going. So thank you for all you do for us, by the way.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, because it is also, October is a lot of things, but it's also Dyslexia Awareness Month. So I found this great t-shirt. It says, really what brought me here today. Dyslexia doesn't come with a manual. It comes with a mother who never gives up. And that's how I got here. 7 years ago, when she was in 1st grade, Gabriella had a reading lag. I didn't know it was dyslexia because I didn't know what dyslexia was. And so now that I do, I'm going to share that information with you. And as I try to discuss what I've learned about dyslexia through the science of it and the science of the brain and what's happening in the brain, I will add her personal testimony. Let's see if I can figure this out. So I had him print out a copy of this timeline. I tried to lay it out so we could see from age 2 how things really began, but we didn't know, again, like I said, what we were looking for. There were different points in her development. All of those points were actual signs of dyslexia. But we weren't looking for that, so we just moved on with how we thought things would go in a typical educational setting. So what is dyslexia? The history of it is really interesting because it's been studied for 150 years. It comes from the word dys, as you see there, impaired, lexis for speech. So it really is a whole language. It's not just reading. It's a difficulty with language. And of these early scientists, medical doctors that studied the brain, the most important person, the most impactful to us now is the Samuel T. Orton, who first called it specific learning disability and then eventually was inspired by Helen Keller's ability to teach the deaf and the blind to read without having those two senses. He wanted to develop a multisensory approach to reading, and he did, and it worked. And right now it's still being used to develop curriculums today. So here is the International Dyslexia Association's official definition of dyslexia. Interestingly, it was originally the Orton Society after Dr. Orton in 1949, but now it is the IDA. And you can see it's very detailed. The key points there, I'll just try to summarize it for you, are the difficulties with word recognition, poor spelling and decoding abilities, and it's a deficit in the phonological component of language. That's a big word, phonological. Simply, it's speech sounds. Even something as simple as understanding rhyming words is an early characteristic of dyslexia. And this takes us to her pre-K that I'll never forget when the pre-K teacher is like, you know, you might want to work with her on her rhyming words. She can't seem to know that hat and cat and at all rhyme. So, okay, well, we'll practice those. So what does it really feel like in the brain for a person who has dyslexia? I just wanted to back up actually one piece in there that I forgot to bring up. It's often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities. So you've got smart people that for whatever reason can't learn to read. Because when you put letters in front of them, there's nothing wrong with the eyes, it's not what they see. But this is just a simulation of what's happening when letters go into the brain. So I'll give you a few minutes to try to read that. So is it frustrating? Slow? What were those sentences about? What is your brain doing while it tries to make sense of that? That's what those with dyslexia experience every single time they read. That's really what it says. The bottom line is that it does exist, no matter what name people give it. It's actually 1 in 5 children, which is 20%. So that statement is actually factual. So when we look at our kindergarten classes, our average class of 25 kids right now, 5 of them are sitting there unable to go k, t, cat. Seems simple enough to us. We move on to bat and rat and at. But some of these students, and Gabriella was one of them, just couldn't get it. So at her IEP meeting in kindergarten, it was determined that, you know, she's really bright, and these Ames Web scores just are not indicative of what Gabriella can actually do. You know, some kids just don't test well. So as she gets older, let's consider adding testing accommodations to her IEP, which honestly now in 7th grade, that's super helpful. But again, we didn't know why this bright kid, it's often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities. I didn't know that definition then. So what is the science of reading, right? We know the state is going through this shift. What's that have to do with dyslexia? The science of reading is the study of how the brain learns to read. And these key points are, actually I kind of found really fascinating that learning to speak is natural. Babies come out, they hear language, they just start picking it up. Multilingual households, right? They just can pick up and differentiate Spanish from English, from Punjabi, depending on, you know, the household you grow up in, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can read all of those languages because our brains are designed for spoken language. Written language is something we humans developed later on. And our brains don't have a system to read. We have to build that space. And using fMRI and EEGs, neuroscientists have been able to actually see when you put somebody in one of those machines and have them read, you can see what's really happening in the brain. And there it is. You see that little blue space there? That is the area in the brain, often known as the letterbox, that develops when a person is learning. We don't have that little blue spot. Non-readers don't have it. And non-readers refers to people maybe who either were never taught to read or come from a culture that is only spoken and doesn't have a written language. They're not going to have the little blue space. And those with dyslexia don't have it either. This is what they have. Yes, the brain is the same, but when they're trying to read, you can see the opposite side is being used. That side, that right brain with our music and our art and our creativity, they're using all that instead of language, science, and logic to try to read. So we look at the two together. You can see how much effort. This one scientist, I quoted him there, they're expending more energy on the right side of the brain than good readers typically do. So there is an actual cerebral signature to finding dyslexia. And it actually can be done at birth, but it can be. People have studied it just to see how early back can we find out what's happening in the brain and predict if this child is going to have a reading problem or not, and it's absolutely possible. The doctor who I read some of his work, he described it as this. It's like trying to paint with your toes rather than your hands. I mean, you're using really perfectly normal equipment for jumping and running, but they're not suitable for painting. So the right brain is not suitable for learning to read. It's a neurobiological glitch. But the great thing about brains, especially children's brains, is they can physically change. The brain can be rewired to learn to read where it's supposed to. But how? Dr. Orton was correct. It can be done using intensive, multisensory, research-based reading intervention that breaks the language down and teaches the reader to decode based on syllable types and spelling rules. It's a lot to do. It's a slow, long process, but the dyslexic brain can eventually learn to use the left side instead of the right. But there's one more really annoying piece to this puzzle, and that's having auditory processing disorder. And many of our students who have speech therapy, this may be one of the reasons they're getting speech therapy, and it ended up being by second grade, we went to Buffalo Hearing and Speech, and sure enough, auditory processing disorder. What's that have to do with reading? Everything, because if we can't understand the sounds, the letters don't mean much. And when they did, this is more imaging, EEGs on a child's brain, while they're hearing sounds like b, d, p, there's actually a slower movement of those waves. Only milliseconds slower in a dyslexic brain, but it's enough that it makes it very difficult. And this is one thing that can actually be remediated with speech therapy to train the brain to hear more accurately. So this is where I'll come back to our timeline, because it took us to second grade to get that piece, but in the meantime, her NWEA was a complete flat line. There was just no reading progress up to that point. And so they recommended to us at Buffalo Hearing and Speech to start piano lessons. Why? Because you can train the brain to hear different sounds differently as you learn to play a musical instrument. So we started that. We increased speech therapy to 2 times a week. And this was by now we're in 3rd grade, and that was our hybrid year, if you guys remember. It was actually great for us because our 2 days at home, we were getting speech with Buffalo Hearing and Speech, and the 2 days at school, we were getting it with school. And we were doing all the extra interventions because we had the time at home to do it. But Buffalo Hearing and Speech said we needed to seek a full neuropsychological evaluation. They believed there was more going on, but that wasn't their job to figure that out. They figured out the auditory processing part. And as I mentioned there, it can take 1 to 2 years, so it did take us till 4th grade. But in the meantime, I'm like, well, now I know there's a problem, and we're not going to waste any more time waiting on a diagnosis. We went to Western New York dyslexia specialists. We started with them. We did a screening through neural learning, which gave us a score of 98 out of 100. So that was a pretty high probability that she had dyslexia, even without a neuropsych evaluation. So we jumped right into 2 times a week, an hour, 1-to-1, for $500 a month. So dyslexia, I always say, is not a poor man's game. The impact, if we don't do anything with it, ultimately, even with it, those who struggle with it every day, even as we're trying to remediate, for our students, you can see the bullet points there. I think some of that probably makes perfect sense. We see what we deal with our kids. I would say the 3rd grade wall is the one thing I wanted to point out the most, because by 3rd grade, we absolutely saw it. It's like she could fake it in kindergarten and 1st grade, but by 3rd, as we switch from learning to read to reading to learn, she and herself knew there was something different. And that's where the hatred of school kind of starts. And I think about our dropout rate, I think about our high schoolers and what we go through to try to get them to show up. If this is just a little piece of it for some of them, that's why when Mr. Laurie says I get passionate about it, I do, because I have this information in my head from what I'm living at home. And I'm not saying it's a horrible thing, it's just a piece. It's a piece of a puzzle that if 20% of the population have it, 1 in 5 of our kids have it, and I went through all this to get to this point, how do I help all those other kids? And the scariest statistic is, even though it's 20% in this room, in prison it's 80%. And I don't even have to talk about why that means something. Our dropout rate, and then our prison population. So it really is a big deal. So much so that it's been brought out, the state is trying to do something. This is the Dyslexia Task Force bill. Part of it is to test all in prison and get them remediated, because look at our costs. Yeah, it's expensive, it's hard. Let you know the GAO, that is a prep school. It's local here in Western New York. They are, let me see, I missed my slides. What makes them different is they're 5 to 12 college prep school. That's what it costs to go to the GAO, so I guess last year we could have went there. The Windward School is in New York City. They have a different model. They are grades 1 through 9, because their goal is to transition by high school, to have everybody from their school go into regular high school. So they start at 1st grade. So 1st grade, that is really when we want to jump on these kids, find them and get them remediated. So like, what's my pie in the sky dream? As a parent who went through the steps, and when you look back and say, oh man, if I knew rhyming words was a problem in pre-K, I would have known. If I'd have known in kindergarten, if I would have known in 1st grade, if I'd have known in 2nd grade. So it gets us so far down the line. And she's just 1. So you guys often ask me, what do you need? Personally, I don't need anything. I don't. She's gonna be okay, because you guys have done what anything I've put forward to our special education committees. It's all being done, and she's doing great. She really is. But I am really here for the 1 in 5. The others, driving back and forth to Williamsville all the time, getting testing, finding doctors, just like with autism. It's like this huge package that you have to set the time and to do the research to really figure it out and know what you're working with. And I appreciate definitely the support that I have gotten, but I would like to find a way, and our SEPTA is kind of part of that. How do we reach the people that don't know? And that's where, you guys come in, and that's why I appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity, because I've spent years with all this information in my head going, what can I do with it? And today I got to do something with it. So thank you. Thank you for Gabriella and all the other dyslexia students that we're helping now, and that we will hopefully continue to help. Because you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And now you know. Thanks.
Questions for? I just wanted to make a few comments. we hit 2 for 2. I won't count the auditors. I knew that was going to be good. We hit just 2 absolutely outstanding presentations filled with so much information and so much appreciation for the comments you've made about the district. And there's no doubt there's more we could do. But it's really awesome to be at a school board meeting not talking about things other than learning and having it come from a parent. We talk too much about other stuff, and now we're talking about learning. And it made me think of 2 things when you were talking. First, it made me think of, the awesome task our teachers have. They have such an awesome task. Look at the neuroscience and the fine details of both presentations, and think about what a teacher really needs to consider and do for kids. And these are just two areas that kids have. We have kids with all other needs as well.
No, we definitely think about that with our SEPTA. That's why we say, we know what our teachers are up against.
Right.
We're here to help.
Right.
What can we do?
Right. And the other thing I think about, it's why I'm just going to be a little patriotic here and talk about public education. And sometimes they say, well, this country is better than us, and this country. What they miss is that the great thing about public education in the United States, and I will say in Niagara Falls, is we strive for 2 things. One is excellence, and the other is equity. We have an obligation to take care of all kids, no matter what they come with. And I get really frustrated when you hear comparisons about countries. Without naming them, other countries don't do that. So it's a very unfair comparison. But our task strives for excellence and equity for every kid. And we saw it, every student. And we saw 2 different types of students, but students that we have to have equity for. I appreciate your passion and your advocacy and certainly your ability to connect with parents and to be that navigator, just as Ms. Adams was, to help parents get through things. And obviously there are things in the presentation that we're considering that we need to do and that we will do. So I just want to say thank you for this and for all you do for your kids and our kids. Thank you for trusting us.
Thanks. And the only thing I forgot to say is, if we bring dyslexia intervention here, maybe we can charge that kind of tuition and people will send their kids to us.
I'm good for any way to make money.
Thank
you know that.
Well, one more
Question.
Oh, sorry.
One more slight question.
Put your microphone.
Similar to, that's the other young lady, Ms. Adams. How are the parents with you folks? I mean, you got a good group going on here? Are you getting, like, are you in the fledgling stages, or?
Yeah, we're brand new. Our first meeting, we were shocked at how many people came. And, people are nervous at first, but, I don't mind sharing if you haven't figured that out. So once we get the floor rolling, more and more sharing began, and people got really comfortable. And it was just like, we didn't know where to even start because everybody had so much information, because each family has their own journey. But when we're on those journeys and those paths, we do our research and then we bring it together. It is overwhelming, so we can understand what your task is, because I have the 2, so I can dig in on this. You guys have, how many thousand?
7,000.
7,000 in our whole district, all of them different. Neurodivergence is huge.
Right.
So whatever we can do to balance all that. And so that's why the engagement, especially of our families and our parents that really want to be engaged and share this information and put together programs or presentations and share knowledge and share tips and tricks, that's what we're trying to get started. But yeah, definitely early.
I just want to make a comment. I don't have any questions, but I want to make a comment. I think it was last month, September, I attended their meeting. And if you want to learn anything about kids with needs, attend one of their meetings. Every parent there was very knowledgeable and very passionate about not only their child, but our entire student body, kids with needs. And I want to commend Marlo and Mrs. Adams for their great presentations tonight and all their good work.
And it's really the brainchild of Jackie. I didn't know there was such thing. So again, you don't know until somebody brings these ideas to you.
Yeah.
And so it's really Mrs. Blaber who
I
said,
forgot Mrs. Blaber.
yeah, no, it's okay.
How you doing?
She's here tonight too. So she said, let's do this. I'm like, okay. And then that's how I met Mrs. Adams. Like, it's because of the shared passion for helping kids with learning differences.
Real parent engagement. Real parent engagement. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members of the board, we have not, I'm going to move on with a difficult transition here because we have business topics to go through. Nothing has changed in terms of the resolutions from last Thursday's review. There are no changes to any of the resolutions. There are no changes to any of the short-term contracts. Maria, are there changes to the personnel report that you'd like to reflect?
There were some changes, but we added the addendum, so they should have, the board should have received them. If you have any questions, you can answer them, you should have everything in front of you.
Okay, Maria, so we have an addendum to come in?
We have for both the classified and the certificated report, is the addendum written.
Okay, so we'll take the addendums first, and then we'll vote on the reports. Remind me when we get there, if you would, Maria, in case I forget.
And again, some short-term contracts, a couple of gifts, the acceptance of $2.8 million worth of grants. We're asking you to accept $2.8 million. I hope you'll do that. We have a few contracts. First of all, we have to accept the audit that you heard from, a clean audit. We're asking you to approve cyber insurance, which we desperately need for our protection. There is a lease for one of our alternative programs, and just a couple of contracts that are paid for out of grants. They reference Dr. Tomir. There's a resolution for him, and we are paying out $1.1 million to our contractors in this month's meeting. Those are resolutions 17 through 24. Those are $1.1 million worth of contractor payments that have all been certified, in addition to Maria's personnel. So that's what we have, Mr. President, and members of the board.
Okay, take 5, start. Okay, please. You can do whatever you like.
When you get to 609,
Yes.
Becky needs the board members to sign how they have voted on this piece of paper, so I'm going to ask you to pass that when you get to
Okay,
609.
that's 609, folks.
609 is just what Judy was sidebarring with, if I may. We spoke last week about our desire to refinance a bond.
Oh, that's right.
In 2014, we had a capital project, and we had the ability to refinance it on November 7th at a lower interest rate that would save us about between $400,000 and $600,000. If for some reason, the basis points are not what we think they're going to be, we just won't do it. We'll tell you and say it wasn't worth it, we're not going to make money, and we won't do it. But this gives us the authorization on November 7th to go forward if the basis points go from 3.5% to 2.7%, which we're anticipating, the ability to save $400,000 just by refinancing one bond. And that's why your individual vote signature needs to occur on that resolution. Did I capture that correct, Becky? Thanks. So, and again, I will keep you posted. It's a couple weeks away. If the bond rate is not what we think it's going to be about 2.75%. That's what we think it's going to be based on the average history. If it's not, I'll tell you it's not, and we won't go forward, or I'll hold it till the next board meeting. I see Earl. Is that Earl Ray?
We got our.
Hi, Earl.
We got Earl on board, and who else? Anybody else? Jimmy's not. Jimmy's excused. Okay. Please call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you. And a prayer for Mrs. Dunn, please.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for allowing to meet once again as a board. We ask that you continue to bless us with your spirit and wisdom as we discuss the order of business today. Help us to find you in all things that we do and to keep the love of Jesus in our hearts. In his precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Clara. And I do not have any letters of communication, and I do not have any agenda item speakers. Judy, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass?
Present.
Mr. Bass, shall I record your votes in the affirmative unless you indicate otherwise?
Yes, that works for me.
Thank you. Mr. Bilson?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Kinsemi, I believe, is excused.
Yes, he is excused.
Mr. Capizzi?
Present.
Mrs. Dunn? Here. Mr. McLeod?
Here.
Mr. Pareto?
Here.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes.
8 present.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take some routine matters. We'll start with recommended actions from Mr. Laurie. We'll take 401 and 402 together. 401 is minutes from September. 402 is approval of budget transfer number 3. Nick moves, second Rob. Questions? All in favor? Excuse me. I apologize. Call the roll,
It's a union
please.
shop, Ross. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Judy. 403, we have a bid, elevator and lift maintenance repair, and that's 4.03. Thank you, Tony. Second, Rob. Questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Mr. McLeod? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes. Thank you, Judy. We will take 2 items, 404 and 405, which are the treasurer's report and the budget status report. They are received and filed. We will move on to our certificated report. We do have an addendum, 4.06, to bring the addendum in, please. Nick, second, Rob. Questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Addendum added.
Appreciate it. Now, we will vote on the report, the certificated report with the addendum added in. Tony? Rob, questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Mr. McLeod? Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Yes. Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you very much. Now, we have an addendum for the classified report. 4.07, to bring it in, please. Rob, second. Nick, questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Addendum added.
Thank you. Now let's vote on that report for classified with the addendum added. Rob, motion, thank you. Second, Nick. Questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. McLeod? Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Yes. Mr. Petrosi?
Yes. Thank you. 408 and 409 we'll take together. They are the Committee on Special Ed, the reports on special ed from the committee, and the Preschool Special Ed Committee. Motion, please. Thank you, Rob. Second, Nick. Questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. We have several short-term contracts. Number 1, Carnegie Learning. Number 2, Stacy Pelicano. Number 3, Curriculum Associates. Number 4, Curriculum Associates again. Number 5, Elizabeth Bell Seminar. Number 6, Dr. Marcus Thomer. We have number 7 and number 8 are over the falls transportation. Number 9, Jeffrey Warren. And number 10, Jeffrey Warren again. And number 11 with Kelly White Proket. And number 13 is Niagara Falls Convention Center. Rob, thank you. Second, Tony. Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. McLeod? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you very much. And we have 4.11, the Head Start reports. Rob on the motion, second Nick. Questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Judy. Under new business, 601 and 602, they are gifts. 01 is the teacher's desk, and number 602 is Jewish Family Services. Motion, Tony, second Nick, to accept these gifts. Any questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. 603 through 606, these are acceptance of funds, extended school day. 604, pathways and technology. 605, federal idea. Number 606 is Niagara Falls Teacher Resource Center. Rob, Nick, questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. 607 is a contract. It's through Community Development Block Grants of the City of Niagara Falls. Nick.
Second.
Tony, questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Wilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Mr. McLeod? Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you very much. 608, this is for that annual audit report we just got, and that was a great report. Glad to hear it. Rob?
No second.
Tony on the second. Questions?
Mr. Petrosi, may I make a comment, please?
You sure can.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to, at this point, encourage you, as the audit committee did, to accept our 23-24 audit. I want to reinforce that our reserve funds have never been healthier. Our material weaknesses, corrections are zero for the third consecutive year. Our single audit had no recommendations for improvement or change. And once again, the members of this board have put the financial ship in a very, very good position, despite challenges, despite concerns with the budget last year. You had the confidence, the trust, and the belief in working through that budget process, not laying off a single person and not cutting a single program, and actually increasing in a few areas. So I just again want to thank the finance team who did all the work, and it didn't just happen last night or last week. It happened every single day of the school year to make it work. And I just wanted to express my pleasure before you vote, and certainly encourage you to vote positively on this, especially in light of what a fantastic audit was presented to you this evening.
Any other questions? Thank you for those words, Mr. Laurie. Call the roll, please, Judy.
Mr. Wilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. McLeod? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Yes. Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you. 609 is to refinance our bond, that one bond we spoke about earlier. Motion, Tony, second, Rob. Questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Wilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. McLeod? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Yes. Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you very much. 6.1 is to bind our cybersecurity insurance. Rob, Nick, questions? Call a roll. I have a comment. I just want to make a comment that our premium for our cyber insurance actually went down, which is unheard of in this market. And I think that is a total, I shouldn't say I think, it's a credit to our staff, you know, especially Ray, because we have put the safeguards in for them to, number one, consider taking the risk and also lowering the premium. Thank you for your hard work, and thank your staff for us. Call a roll.
Mr. Mr. Wilson? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. McLeod? Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you very much. 6.11 to 6.16 are extra contracts. 6.11 is for the Boys and Girls Club. Number 612, Falls Environmental and Ecological Student Ambassadors Summit. 6.13 is the School Resource Officers from the city. 6.14 is the Jason Scott for the Black Excellence Mentoring Program. 6.15 is Project Lee. 6.16 is the Institute for Autism Research at Canisius University. Thank you, Rob. Second, Tony. Questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bilson? Mr. Capizzi? Mrs. Dunn? Mr. McLeod? Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you very much. 6.17 to 6.24, I will take together with your permission. 6.17, payment number 7 to Scafari. These are all payments on our capital projects. 6.18, payment number 3 to MKS Plumbing. 6.19, payment number 7 to Fry Electric. Payment 6.20 to John Danforth, that's payment number 7. Again, payment number 7 on 6.21 to John Danforth. 6.22 is payment number 4 to Greater Niagara Mechanical. 6.23 is payment number 7 to StarTech. And payment number 624 is to Johnson Controls, and that was payment number 6. Tony, Vic, questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bilson? Mr. Capizzi? Mrs. Dunn? Mr. McLeod? Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you very much. Information and reports, I'm going to start with the public speaking on non-agenda items. One speaker tonight, Jackie Castillo Blaber. Name and address, please, and who you may represent. Thank you very much. Colleagues, before I turn this over, I'm going to start with Mark. Don't forget to please sign that for the refinancing of the bonds, if you would. Mr. Laurie, would you?
Yeah, thank you very much. Our meetings in November are on the 7th and the 21st. I'm going to make a change to the agenda. I'm going to have the law firm of Corella and Buckman do a little bit of a presentation to lead that meeting off on some things that are working, what's right. And then we'll be able to really hear a complete package of everything that we're talking about. So just make note that we meet again November 7th for review. 21st is the voting meeting in the month of November. To our speakers and to our public speaker, thank you very much. Just outstanding Outstanding job. It's nice to be at a board meeting when we're talking about kids, and too often I don't direct it that way well enough. And we have the mundane business steam valves conversations. And that's important, right? But it's not as important as our kids. And Ms. Adams, I thought it was a really neat slide where you juxtaposed ABA and floor time. So I have heard the call for floor time, and we are researching hopefully a more local presenter. If not, we'll seek a presenter from Rochester. As far as I can see, that's where the closest one we've been able to find would be. So I do hear you. We do want to have that balanced approach, and we do want to make sure we use the right teaching tools or the right training tools for the right kids. Just a couple of really exciting upcoming events. But before I do that, I want to stay in alignment with the science of reading and the speakers that we've heard the last 2 weeks. Rick and Carrie on Wednesday are going to be attending a Western New York Educational Alliance Science of Reading seminar all day at Star Point. So I just want board members to know that Mr. Corella and Ms. Buckman will be attending as our representatives, and they'll bring back information. This is the organization that Ms. Tarja, who was here last week, puts on, and Rick and Carrie are going to make the trek to Star Point to participate that day. But the rest of these are really mark your calendar worthy, I would say, and really kind of neat things. First of all, next Wednesday at 8:30 at Niagara Falls High School, 8:30 in the morning, they're doing a financial fair with the students. And they're going to do a morning of tabling and financial affairs, financial learning and literacy. We have those classes, but we've got outside presenters coming in just around financial literacy at the high school, 8:30 to 11. I applaud the high school for doing that, and I thank Bank on Buffalo for being the sponsor of this. Mark your calendars. We won't be together until after this occurs, but Saturday, November the 2nd at noon, get to Niagara Falls High School. We'll walk the world with over 60 countries. It last time had 600 or 700 people. It's a wonderful event. You'll see cultures, you'll have food, you'll see a lot of kids, you'll see dance, dress, and fun. Walk the world, and you had 2 resolutions this evening that are gifting us money and supplies for this great event. It's at Niagara Falls High School, and it begins at noon on the 2nd. Next, tomorrow, I just want you to know that I'm going to go to 79th Street School at 1 o'clock because we're having a book signing. We have a young lady in 3rd grade. Her name is Nakia Johnson. She wrote a book. It was published. They sold it on Amazon, and we bought copies for everyone in her class, and she is going to sign our books for all of her classmates, and I'm going to see if I can get a free copy signed for me, and hopefully she'll read it to me, but I just want to congratulate Nakia Johnson tomorrow. Let's go back to the 23rd. That's Wednesday. It's a very big day. Our elementary 4th, 5th, and 6th graders are participating in the Joe Jacob. Joe Jacob is a longtime physical education teacher with us who started an elementary running program. And the annual Joe Jacob Elementary Run is next Wednesday at 4 o'clock at Calandrelli Field behind the high school. It'll be a lot of fun, lots of kids, lots of running, and I'll be doing a lot of watching and walking. I wanted to give a shout out to a group of people, and this comes from our friend Stacy Rowe, who does the clothes closet. She wrote me a special note to thank Aeropostale. They donated a truckload of hygiene items and clothing for our clothes closet. So thanks to Aeropostale, I think it's at the Factory Outlet Mall. She was so overwhelmed by the donation, and we want to thank that group. And I should mention, they also went to a local dry cleaner on Main Street. I don't recognize it anymore, but that individual who runs it donated quite a bit of clothing as well. No, the new owners. Yeah, it was the new owners. Yeah, I don't know who it was, but it was the new owners. The former owners said, no, don't do it. No. Russ gave Stacy, and she wrote me purposefully to say thank you for all that you gave her for the clothes closets, Russ. Yep. Lastly, I am going to be joining a couple of board members in New York City, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Tuesday, it's the New York State School Boards Conference. I like going for a couple of reasons, but mainly I like going because I get to walk around with members of a great school district. And usually we walk in and say, well, we're doing that, we did that, we can do that. Why aren't we presenting this? That's what we usually mumble to each other. But we're first of all, we're pleased to be able to attend that, and I will certainly bring back any information to share with staff or the board. And again, a little bit of a special final shout out to Tony for enduring the voting that he did, as I see him point to Mr. Bilson as the next victim. But thanks Tony for enduring that arduousness. You know what? He did it and he survived. So congratulations and thanks, Tony. Again, I just want to say this to conclude. We continue to have great school days. Great school days. We're never perfect. When you have 7,000 students, 11, 12, 13 buildings, 14 buildings, including this, 1,500 staff, you certainly deal with issues. But we move in a pretty good and efficient manner to do the very best we can to educate kids who come from all walks of life with all kinds of needs. So I thank all the staff for their support and their really great start that we're off to this year. We will need an executive session, Mr. President and members of the board. I'd ask you to vote on it. The reason will be for a collective bargaining negotiation, and it's one item, and there will not be any vote afterwards. So no action will be taken after the conclusion of the conversation. Otherwise, thank you so much for supporting all of the resolutions and the really great board meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'll go around the table for my colleagues. I'm going to start with Clara today. Anything? Nothing? Thank you, Clara. Brad?
I thoroughly enjoyed the presentations today. I learned a lot myself. Miss Adams, this is just a small, fun comment for you. You're a citizen of our city. I think it would be great to have somebody like you in our district. I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
I agree. Yeah, he didn't see when you did that. Do it again. Do it again. Yeah, that's what she did. Do it again.
We'll keep talking.
Thank you, Brad. Mike? Thank you, Michael. Mr. Villado, Nick?
I have more than normal to say tonight. I want to thank our presenters tonight. They both did a great job and very informative. Thank you for showing up and sharing your knowledge with us. The second thing is I have to correct Mr. Laurie on a thing. When we go to NSBA conventions and these seminars, it's not that we've done it. We've been doing it for a long time. And these other schools think it's something new, but there's things we've done for years that other school districts are just finding out now. And the third and final thing is on a personal note. There was a great article in the other day's Gazette in the Sporting News on the front page of an 8th grade student of ours playing varsity soccer, who is the leading goal scorer for Niagara Falls High School, the second in the NFL, and she's 8th in Section 6, and it happens to be my niece.
Yeah,
Carmel. So I want to give her a little thank out, and she's another one of our student athletes, and she's not only a good athlete, right, she can do a lot of things very well, a very good athlete, and she's a good student also. So I just have to give her a little shout out.
And we
'Cause,
think her mother's a pretty good principal, too.
Her mother was a good athlete too, from what I hear.
Was
She
she?
didn't inherit anything from her father.
I was gonna say that.
But that's, you know.
Her father,
And,
not so much.
You know, and on a sadder note, my brother, who had passed a few years ago, would be extremely proud of her.
Oh, thank you, Nick. Would Nick fail to tell you, he's now representing her as her agent. Rob? Yeah, that's wonderful. Nothing today, Tony?
Again, you folks opened my eyes today about a lot of different things. I thought I knew what, but I learned something every day, and today I learned twice. But if there's anything we can do as a board to assist with possibly, you know, opening other people's eyes as our eyes are open today, be it throwing things in a newsletter or maybe a call or, you know, a computerized call to try to drum up more support for these two groups, one more established than the other, but I can see this, anything we can do to help you folks with your endeavors, please come back and see us again. But again, thank you very much.
Earl, are you there, Earl?
Nope, I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Earl. I am going to be very brief, but I have to say, our two presenters, I've been in this, in your realm for about 35 years at Niagara Cerebral Palsy, now Empower. And that was one of the best, concise, easy to understand presentations that I've had. And I am going to be calling on you to present to Empower's board. It was amazing how easy it was to follow and how accurate it really was. Thank you for that. Any staff? That'll be okay. We are going to have an executive session, so we'll take the vote on that in a minute, but we are going to adjourn tonight's meeting and in the memory of the following who are no longer with us. Robert Colati, father of retiree Sharon Colati, Robert Naughton, brother-in-law of retired teacher Debbie Duro Naughton, Wayne Van Vliet, general counsel of BOCES. Okay, we will be adjourning those memories. You want to say something, Mike?
I do. Executive session for contract negotiations that are protected, one item, and no action taken after. So I would ask you to entertain that vote.
Nick, second. Rob, Judy, you want to call the roll on that for me?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. Good night to the audience.